Imagine yourself lying on a smooth rock in the Appalachian Mountains, surrounded by the stillness of a quiet night. The cool breeze brushes your face, and the vast night sky stretches above like an infinite canvas, studded with stars pulsing like your heartbeat. In the distance, leaves rustle gently with the wind, while crickets hum their soothing melody. High above, the moon casts its soft glow, wrapping the mountains in a silent embrace. As you gaze upward, a sense of mystery stirs within you. What lies beyond this vast and silent sky? Could there be more than meets the eye? What if I told you that the answer to this question has been preserved in the scriptures for thousands of years? The Bible reveals something extraordinary. Not just one, but three heavens, each carrying profound meanings that can transform your understanding of life and spirituality. In this video, you are invited to explore the three heavens mentioned in the Bible. Each reflection will unfold like a heartfelt conversation, accompanied by carefully chosen sacred paintings. This unique and uplifting format will bring ancient truths to life, offering you a spiritual and visual journey you won't forget. Prepare to expand your vision and renew your faith with these revelations. Stay with me to uncover the secrets of the three heavens. Let these insights transform your faith and your life. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs this powerful message. Together, let's spread light and hope. Let me start our conversation with a question. Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered about everything that might be out there? I'm not just talking about stars and planets. I mean mysteries, the kind that make your heart race and your mind wander. The Bible speaks of three heavens, and each one holds a story, a lesson, a purpose. Let's start with the basics. The first heaven. That's an easy one, right? It's the sky we see every day, bright blue or scattered with clouds and sometimes gray, especially when you forget your umbrella. This heaven is the stage where life unfolds. It's where birds take flight, where the sun rises and sets, and where the rain nourishes the earth. Now, think about this. Isn't it amazing how everything works in perfect harmony? The sun, for instance, shows up every single day, shining for everyone without picking favorites. And doesn't that remind you of something? God's grace, constant and generous, just like the sun that warms our lives. Now, pay close attention. Did you know that in the Bible, the first heaven has witnessed some remarkable events? It's where God speaks to us through His creation. David wrote in Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands." So, when you look at a breathtaking sunset or see stars sparkling in the dark night, that's God showing you His greatness. Have you ever thought about it that way? It's as if He's saying, "Look at what I've created for you." And there's so much more where that came from. But here's where it gets interesting. As beautiful as the first heaven is, it's just the beginning. It's like the appetizer to a grand banquet. Have you ever thought about it like that? The Bible reveals that there's something far beyond this physical sky, and that's where we begin our ascent to the second heaven. Ah, the second heaven. This one is a bit more mysterious. We can't see it, but the Bible gives us clues. It's like an invisible battleground where angels and spiritual forces are at work. Now, let me tell you something. If you feel like life sometimes resembles a battlefield, imagine what's happening in that heaven. It's where prayers are heard, battles are fought, and miracles begin to take shape. Incredible, isn't it? And here's the most amazing part. God is in control of it all. He's like a coach who knows the perfect strategy for every game, even when we don't understand. The plays. Want to see an example from the Bible? Remember the book of Daniel? In chapter 10, Daniel was praying, but the answer took 21 days to arrive. Why? Because the angel bringing the message was delayed by evil spiritual forces in the second heaven. It took Michael, the archangel, to step in so God's message could reach Daniel. Can you imagine what might be happening in the second heaven right now as you pray? It's awe-inspiring, isn't it? But before we climb higher, let me take a quick pause. Have you noticed how our lives are filled with first heavens? We get so caught up in what's right in front of us, work, bills, the hustle, that we forget there's something much greater happening. Maybe today is the day to lift your eyes and remember that while the first heaven is beautiful, there's so much more waiting for us. And here's something curious. We often think that everything happens right here in the first heaven. But the Bible teaches us that there's a direct connection between the visible and the invisible heavens. When you see the rain falling, have you ever thought that each drop is like a blessing from God? And when the wind blows, could it be a reminder that He is always near, even when we can't see Him? These small details in the first heaven are like tiny love letters from God to us. So now we come to a choice. Will we keep looking only at what is visible? Or will we allow ourselves to see beyond? And this leads us directly to the third heaven. But hold on. Let's not rush. Let's climb step by step, savoring this journey, like a warm cup of coffee on a cold morning. Now that we've explored the first heaven and caught a glimpse of the second, let's ascend a little higher. But before we do, let me ask you, have you ever tried to imagine the heaven where God dwells? Not the sky you see when you look up, but that divine realm described as His eternal home. Just thinking about it makes your heart race, doesn't it? That's the third heaven, the pinnacle of God's creation. To understand the third heaven, we need to turn to one of the Bible's most intriguing passages, the account of the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 12. He speaks of a man who was actually himself being caught up to the third heaven. Paul describes it as a place so glorious, so beyond human comprehension, that he couldn't even put it into words. Now think about that. If Paul, with all his wisdom and eloquence, couldn't describe it, imagine how magnificent it must be. It's the kind of wonder that defies words and fills only the heart. What makes the third heaven so extraordinary? It's simple. That's where God is. It's the place where He reigns supreme, where His glory shines brighter than the noonday sun. It's the ultimate destination for those who put their faith in Him. A place where there is no more pain, no sorrow, no tears. But let me pause for a moment and ask, have you ever considered that, even while living in the first heaven, you can catch glimpses of the third? When you feel peace in the midst of chaos, or when a prayer is answered in an unexpected way, those are small touches of the supreme heaven breaking into our earthly lives. It's as if God is giving us tiny previews of eternity. And here's something even more curious. The third heaven is also a reminder of how much God cares for us. Imagine this: the Creator of everything, who could dwell anywhere, chose to prepare a place where He could be with us. Jesus Himself said in John 14, "In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you." Have you ever thought about that? It's like God is the ultimate host, meticulously arranging every detail, from the decorations to the feast, just so you feel at home. Now, let me share a story. Once, I heard an elderly man say that, as a boy, he would lie on the grass and stare at the sky, trying to imagine what God's dwelling place might be like. He described the sky as a giant blue hug, with the clouds floating like pillows. And here's the beautiful part. Even as he grew older, his faith retained that childlike simplicity. He would say, "I don't know what heaven looks like, but I'm sure it's the place where my heart will finally rest." And that made me wonder, do we sometimes make things more complicated than God intended? He calls us to trust, to look up to the heavens, and to remember that there's something greater, a purpose that gives meaning to it all. The third heaven isn't just a destination. It's an invitation to live with purpose, to see beyond what is visible. And speaking of seeing beyond, let me ask you something. Have you noticed how all the heavens are interconnected? The first heaven captivates us, the second challenges us, and the third inspires us. It's like a grand orchestra, where every part plays its role, but all point to the same conductor. And this conductor, he doesn't just lead the music. He invites us to be part of it. Have you thought about that? Every time you choose to trust, to pray, or simply to give thanks, it's like you're playing a note in this divine melody. So, what have we learned so far? The first heaven shows us the beauty of creation. The second reveals the spiritual battle, and the third gives us the hope of a glorious future. But there's so much more ahead. Are you ready to dive deeper into this journey? One thing that fascinates me about the third heaven is its promise of perfection and eternity. It's like a place beyond imagination, yet the heart knows it's real. And here's the most incredible part. The Bible says this heaven is prepared for us. It's not a vague idea. It's not a maybe. It's something concrete, as real as the air we breathe. Now, think about this. If God cares enough to prepare a place for us, what does that say about how much He cares for every detail of our lives? And speaking of details, let me share something curious. Have you ever heard of Stephen's vision in Acts 7? He was being stoned in his final moments, and he had a vision of the heavens opening. He saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God. Now, pause and think. Jesus, the King of Kings, standing, not sitting on his throne, but standing as if ready to receive Stephen. Can you imagine that? Isn't it awe-inspiring to think about how closely God watches over each of us, even in the hardest moments? It's the third heaven connecting directly to our reality. But wait, let's go back for a moment. Have you ever noticed how the heavens God created follow a perfect order? It's not chaotic. It's not random. It's as if each heaven has a specific role in the divine plan. The first heaven, the one we see every day, is the canvas where God paints the beauty of creation. The second heaven is where spiritual battles take place, where God fights for us, even when we're unaware. And the third heaven? The third heaven is the final destination, where everything makes sense, where tears are wiped away, and where peace is eternal. And here's what makes me curious. What could this place truly be like? The Bible gives us some clues. Revelation 21, for instance, speaks of a new Jerusalem with streets of gold, walls made of precious stones, and a crystal-clear river flowing through the city. Sure, it could all be symbolic, but whether symbolic or not, you can feel that it's a place beyond our imagination. Now, I'll confess something. If there's coffee and bread rolls there, it's perfect for me already. All jokes aside, this description from Revelation is more than just a portrait of a beautiful place. It's a message of hope. It's as if God is saying, I've prepared something so incredible that you can't even imagine. But trust me, because what lies ahead is far better than anything you've ever seen. Doesn't that fill your heart with hope? Even on hard days, in moments when it feels like everything is going wrong, remembering this place brings comfort and renewed strength. And speaking of comfort, have you noticed how the heavens are also an invitation to rest in God? Think about it. If God is capable of creating something so grand, so perfect, wouldn't He also be capable of taking care of us here in the first heaven? Sometimes we worry too much, rushing from one thing to the next, trying to control everything. But the heavens remind us that God is in control. He takes care of the birds in the sky, the sparkle of the stars, and the waves of the sea. So why wouldn't He take care of you? And here's an important question. How does this vision of the heavens transform our lives today? It's not just about the future, about the third heaven we'll one day reach. It's about living with purpose right now. It's about looking at the first heaven and seeing the glory of God. It's about remembering that even in the second heaven, where spiritual battles take place, God is in command. And above all, it's about having the certainty that the third heaven is our ultimate destination. So, what do you think? Are you starting to see the heavens in a different way? By the way, if this message is already touching your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any content that can transform your life and the lives of others. Now that we've reflected on the heavens and their wonders, let me share something that always amazes me: how God uses the heavens to communicate with us. I'm not talking about extraordinary things, like seeing messages written in the clouds, but about how the heavens remind us every day of God's care. You know when you're in the middle of a hard day, and suddenly the sky opens up with a sunset so beautiful it looks like a hand-painted masterpiece? That's no coincidence. It's as if God is saying, "Hey, I'm here. Take a deep breath. Everything will be okay." It's a silent but powerful message. And you know what's curious? The Bible is full of examples of how the heavens were used to deliver important messages. One of my favorite stories is the account of Jesus' birth. Remember the Star of Bethlehem? The one that guided the wise men to where Jesus was? Now, think about this. God didn't choose to send an angel to guide the wise men. He used a star, something simple, natural, yet with a divine purpose. That's how God works. He uses what's already around us to remind us that He is present. Sometimes it's a star in the sky. Other times, it's a timely word or an unexpected hug that makes us feel embraced. And speaking of starry skies, did you know that stars are one of the most mentioned things in the Bible? David in Psalm 8 said, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them?" Isn't that profound? It's as if the heavens are a constant reminder that even though we are so small in the vastness of the universe, God knows us by name and cares about every detail of our lives. Now, let me share a funny story. When I was a child, I believed that stars were tiny holes in the sky, where God's light was shining through. I used to stare at them, trying to find the biggest star, thinking it was a VIP window to peek into heaven. Of course, I know, that's not true now, but in a way, I wasn't entirely wrong. Stars, with all their brilliance, still give us a glimpse of God's power and glory. And speaking of glory, have you ever heard about the glory of the heavens? It's an expression that appears in many biblical texts and is always tied to the idea of something that points to God. The sky, with its vastness, is like a giant arrow reminding us to look up, especially when things down here get tough. That's why the vision of the heavens is so important. It doesn't just inspire us, it gives us perspective. And you know what? Sometimes, what we need most is perspective. When everything seems confusing and chaotic, looking up at the sky is like pressing the reset button. It's a reminder that God is in control, that there's something greater than our immediate problems. And that's not just beautiful, it's transformative. Because once we understand this, Even the way we approach life changes. We start living with more purpose, with more hope. And this brings me to a reflection. Are we fully appreciating what the heavens have to teach us? Because, you see, the sky isn't just a place for contemplation. It's also an invitation to action. When Jesus ascended to heaven, the disciples stood there gazing in wonder. But do you know what the angel said to them? "Why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus, who has been taken from you into heaven, will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven." That's profound. It's as if God is saying, yes, look to the heavens, but don't forget to act here on earth. And that's such a powerful lesson. Because while we wait for the third heaven, while we face the struggles of the second heaven, we need to make our time in the first heaven count. We need to be the light, just as the heavens are light for us. We need to spread hope, just as the heavens give us hope every single day. And do you know how we start doing that? With simple things. A smile, a kind word, a prayer for someone in need. That's how we bring a piece of heaven down to earth. Because, at the end of the day, it's not just about reaching the third heaven. It's about living in a way that already reflects a glimpse of what's to come. Now let me ask you this. What will you do with everything you've just heard? Because the true beauty of the heavens isn't just in admiring them, it's in letting them transform the way we live. Shall we go out together and spread a little piece of heaven wherever we go? If you've made it this far, you've probably realized that the heavens are much more than something beautiful to admire. They are living messages from God, calling us to something greater. And you know what's fascinating? When we understand the meaning of the three heavens, our perspective completely changes. Life is no longer just about what we see with our eyes. It's about what we feel in our hearts and believe with our souls. Now let me share something I once read that I've never forgotten. The sky is not the limit, it's the beginning. Isn't that an incredible thought? Because the first heaven, with all its beauty, is just an introduction. The second heaven, with its spiritual battles, is where our prayers find their way to God's throne. And the third heaven, oh, the third heaven, is the great reward, the happy ending God has prepared for those who love Him. And speaking of rewards, let's be honest, how often do we forget about this? We get so caught up in the worries of daily life, the bills to pay, the goals to achieve, that we lose sight of what really matters. But then I remember what Jesus said. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and rust destroy, but store up treasures in heaven. Matthew 6:19-20. And do you know what that means? It means our true treasure is there, where neither time nor hardship can reach. That's where God's heart is, and that's where He wants ours to be too. And here's something else. God doesn't call us to passively wait for that heaven. He calls us to live it here and now, reflecting His light through our actions. It's as if every time you forgive someone, you're opening a small window to let the light of the third heaven shine into the first. Every time you choose kindness, even when it's hard, it's like you're bringing a piece of eternity into the present. Let me tell you a story. Once, a young boy was gazing at the sky with his father. It was late in the afternoon, and the sky was painted with hues of orange and pink. The boy asked, "Dad, do you think God lives behind that sky?" The father, with a gentle smile, replied, "I believe so, son, and I think that every good thing we do here is like helping to paint the sky we'll see there." Isn't that a beautiful image? Every act of love, every gesture of faith is like a divine brushstroke on the canvas of our lives. And then comes the big question. How can we live as citizens of the third heaven while we're still in the first? The answer is simpler than it seems. It's not about doing grand or perfect things. It's about being faithful in the small things. Imagine this: a small act of kindness, helping a neighbor, sharing an encouraging word, or even taking a moment to listen to someone who feels invisible can have a ripple effect you might never see. It's like planting seeds in a garden you won't harvest, but knowing the beauty it will one day bring. And isn't that what faith is all about? Trusting that every act of goodness, no matter how small, is part of something far greater than we can imagine. Sometimes it's a kind gesture to a stranger. Other times, it's the quiet prayers no one else hears but God. These are the moments that build bridges between heaven and earth, because in the end, it's these small actions that God uses to transform the world. And speaking of transformation, let me leave you with an invitation. The next time you look up at the sky, don't just see the clouds or the stars, see the promise. See the connection. Remember that you are part of something far greater than what your eyes can perceive. And more importantly, remember that the God who created the heavens created you with a purpose. He loves you, He sees you, and He is preparing something wonderful for you. Before we finish, let me remind you of one thing. You are not alone. Every time you look at the sky and feel its vastness, know that God is there, but He's also right here, beside you, in every detail of your life. Think about the moments when life feels overwhelming. Those moments when a breeze suddenly cools your face, or the sun breaks through after a storm, are reminders of His presence. And sometimes, it's not just in nature, but in the people He places in your life. A friend's comforting words, a family member's embrace, or even the kindness of a stranger. These are all ways God whispers, "I'm with you." He is in the sun that warms your skin, in the breeze that cools your face, and even in the rain that washes the earth. He is in everything, because the heavens are a reflection of His love. So, what will you do with this? Will you let the heavens inspire you to live with more hope, more purpose, more faith? I hope you will. Because when we live with heaven in our hearts, everything here on earth takes on new meaning. And when we finally reach the third heaven, we'll look back and realize that every moment was worth it. And as we close, I want to thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope this message has touched your heart and renewed your faith. If you felt something special, share this video with someone who needs this message. Like, comment, and let's spread this light and hope together. May God bless your life, and may the heavens continue to inspire you every single day. Until we meet again.